So the other day I was thinking about some of the biggest changes I've gone through in my life. Ooh, right away I got a good one. The early stages of puberty, the raging hormones, feeling angry at the world, waking up each morning to a different constellation of zits covering my face. What's not to love? And so as I'm thinking about this out loud to myself, all of a sudden I hear laughing behind me, the Super Nintendo. You think having a pizza face will get you made fun of? Try growing a third arm, something I still get made fun of for all these years later. Yeah, as awkward as my transition from a kid to a teenager was, the transition of the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64 was far more awkward, and by extension, the transition of the 4th generation to the 5th generation. For this reason, I've always felt like the 5th generation was the biggest leap that video games ever had, and right away, some of you are probably thinking, whoa, I thought some of the changes that the 5th generation made, they sucked, like moving mostly away from 2D games in favor of ugly, primitive 3D games. And listen, I hear ya on that one, but I think of it like this. Even if you're leaping off of a cliff, that's still a really big leap. If you're looking at a generational leap in terms of when things changed the most, well, it really doesn't get much more different than the 4th generation and 5th generation. I mean, it's like night and day. They are totally different from each other. And also, you gotta remember that it's not like the 5th gen is just completely hated. There's a lot of people who really love the 5th generation. With the increased emphasis of games now being in 3D, all of a sudden you saw developers starting to explore certain genres in ways that they never had before, or perhaps coming up with new genres that didn't really exist in any sort of significant way before. For example, survival horror games, yeah, they were around before the 5th generation, but with the 5th generation, with Resident Evil and Silent Hill, the genre kind of became its entirely own brand new thing at that point. As a result, many people were having gaming experiences unlike anything they had ever experienced before, and in some cases it could have been absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking the type of thing that could just blow a popsicle straight off the stick. In fact, quick little story for you. So back in the day, the very first time I ever played Nintendo 64, and therefore Super Mario 64, was at my neighbor's house who lived behind me. So one day he's walking along and he's like, hey, would you want to come over sometime? I had never hung out with him before. And so I was like, sure. So I go over there and he's like, you want to play some Nintendo 64? To which I was like, sure, I guess so. Now, at the time, I hadn't played video games for about 6 months or so. I'm not sure why, other than kids are weird and they're randomly in and out of things, but so anyways, he pops in Super Mario 64, and yeah, I hadn't played video games for 6 months, but it felt like it might as well have been 6 years. I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the screen. I mean, there was Mario moving all over the screen. Front flips, back flips, side flips, crawling on the ground like a baby, inching up a tree like a cute little caterpillar. I mean, what couldn't he do in this game? I mean, I was fired up by this, but it was all just a little bit too much for me. So I said to my neighbor, hey, can we step outside for a minute here? We gotta talk about this. So we start to head outside, and on our way, his mom says, hey, do you want a popsicle? And I said, heck yeah, I want a popsicle, thank you. So we go outside and I start talking and talking and talking. And then after a while, I realized that I had been neglecting my popsicle, and it had melted all the way down the stick, all over my hand. Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't shoot up into the air like a rocket. So what did I do? Get a new one, right? Heck no, I was like 9 years old. I just ate that thing right off of my hand. Now, do I like Super Mario 64 as much today as I did back then? No, I still really like it a lot, but how could I have liked it as much as I did in that moment, being so excited? The point is that it was just so notable back then, in the type of way that made you think, whoa, so this is what they're going to be doing with video games? Whereas pretty much every generation since then has kind of been like, yeah, okay, this is nice, but this makes sense of where they would go with it. I think a great example of this would be the 6th generation. Now, as popular of a generation as it is, I think it was pretty obvious what was gonna happen heading into that generation. It's like the whole gaming industry just got together and was like, yeah, okay, all these sort of rough around the edges 3D games, let's just sort of clean this crap up and make things look a lot nicer and run smoother. And for the most part, that's what happened. I suppose you could make the argument that video game consoles being internet connected devices in a much more mainstream way was also a big leap, because as much as some of us might hate the changes that came as a result of game consoles being connected to the internet. I mean, being able to purchase a different color headband for Ryu in Street Fighter isn't exactly groundbreaking, but the whole shift to competitive online multiplayer, that is a big, huge change in gaming. I mean, my younger cousin singing John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt into my headset while I was mowing fools down in Halo back in the day, that's a big deal. I also want to quickly mention the transition from games being on cartridges to games being on CDs, to then eventually being on cartridges again. But in any case, when games first came to CDs, it was a big deal, and more with the PlayStation 1 than anything else. I mean, sure, there was the Turbo CD, Sega CD, stuff like that before it, but the PlayStation 1 sold a lot, and so it could be considered a truly mainstream console. And having the games on CDs totally changed games, because now you could stick these huge video files onto these discs, which could allow cinematics to be in the games, which totally changed the way that you could implement story into these games. So yeah, clearly I think the 5th gen was the biggest leap, and oh, also let it be known that the 4th gen is actually my favorite gen overall, so I don't want to be accused of being biased on this one. But with all that said, I would be curious what choices all of you have, and perhaps do you think that the biggest leap is still yet to come? Something's gonna be invented that just blows us all away? You never know. But with all that said, be sure to leave your responses down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah. And he's talking about video.